I was dying. And I was getting procedures every 2 weeks to put stents in my pancreas. Sitting down at the wedding and apparently choosing not to wear underwear and falling off of the stool. I had a job doing security, and I would just dip underneath the dash cam, take a shot, and then come back up and continue driving. At one point, I had 3 liters of pancreatic fluid drained from my abdomen. I remember getting out of bed, and it just felt like rolling a water cooler. Alcohol was killing me. I always say, you're looking for reduction, not perfection. 30 failures and 1 success is way better than not even trying. And if you dip your toes in, that's cool. The water will still be there for you when you're ready to come back in a little bit more.
What was it like living alone?
Living alone was definitely a transition period in like the way that my drinking exploded, I would say, because it went from being in a house where you live with other people and you have to hide your drinking to I really only have to hide my drinking and the small amount of times that I'm outside of my house. So my boyfriend at the time was deploying, so we found a little apartment, put me in it, and I had free range. That's just when it started. The second I was alone, from when I wake up till when I go to sleep, means I get to drink and nobody knows. The only person knows that's me, and that's totally fine. And time would pass in such a way because for deployments where he went, they come home at certain times and you're always like, I have 6 months or I have a year to get my shit together. And it always goes so quick to being like, I have 6 months to I have 2 weeks and nothing's changed. And I would just be in my house drinking until I had to go to work. I would go to work, stop at the grocery store, get whatever microwave, something easy food I could make at home. And I was buying bottles of alcohol every day from the store, even switching which stores I would go to because I didn't want them to recognize me. Oh, you're here again was something I always wanted to avoid hearing. So it was like I had my stops. Okay, I went to this one 2 times ago, so now we can go to this one or this one or this one. And it just gave me too much time to myself. And I would get as drunk as possible before I would go to work. If I couldn't drink at work, if I couldn't find a way to sneak something in a bottle, sneak away to the bathroom, do whatever.
How did it start?
Drinking? I started actually drinking late in high school for fun, kind of innocently as other people do. I remember always being terrified of hangovers, so it took me a really long time to drink because I always remember the Cosby Show, and they had her drink all of these things and she felt terrible, and I'm like, I can't feel that way. I had a thing when I was younger about throwing up. And so I was like, that sounds like the worst possible outcome, so I will never, ever do that. And then, you just do a little bit more and a little bit more. And I think I was blacking out every time I drank within the first year of drinking. I remember like graduating high school and finding friends that I knew who were 21 and, even being like, I just don't understand who needs to drink at 2 p.m. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm 19 and making all sorts of awesome decisions for myself. And I lost a job at Pizza Hut because I came in blackout drunk, and it's just a lot of those things that are, luckily it happened and it was inconsequential at the time. Like I think I had 2 other jobs and I always seemed to land on my feet, which was both a good and a bad thing because it always portrayed this struggling but doesn't need help. I got it. And everybody believes me. And so I had it I think I drank for about exactly 10 years. I drank all of the alcohol that I was allotted in 10 years. And it just became the only thing to do. It was, what am I doing tonight? I'm going to go do this. I can't wait until I go do this. It's almost Friday. I get to go do this. And it was fun for a long time.
Were your parents like that?
My parents drank on the weekends, especially. When I grew up, they were, I specifically remember it was Friday and Saturday nights were big. We would go, it was cartoon nights for me and my sister, and so we could stay up as late as we wanted, and we would go to Blockbuster, and we would get videotapes and candy and all that stuff. And my parents would also celebrate Friday nights, and they would make fun drinks. They had all of the bar books, and they had a fully stocked bar with all of the mixers and cool cups and cherries and little animals you could put on the things. And that looked like so much fun. And it was so much fun. And my parents had me bartend at a very young age because it was fun for me and also hilarious for your 10-year-old to be like, you want to make a Long Island iced tea? She knows it by heart, you know? So I was exposed to it at a very, very early age. And it was normalized. And I remember thinking that late into my drinking of just, well, like, this is the point, it seems like. It always seems like this was my prize. You know, I do all my normal human duty things. I went to work and I did all the things and my bills are paid. So why don't I get to drink whenever I want to drink? And especially the longer that I went in, the more that you're handling it and nobody knows. It's like, why doesn't everybody do this? Am I winning? I don't understand. Like, why this seems so easy for me to get drunk in the morning and go throughout my day and then come home and get drunk still. And so I just don't understand why everybody, like, I feel like I'm missing out because you hear songs too, like Miley Cyrus, where she's talking about all we do is we party and we're out here. And it's just, it seems so validating of like, yeah, you know, the rock stars get it. They know what fun is. They know what good feels like. I'm clearly just, I've got it figured out because I'm partying and being an adult and doing all of my adult tasks.
And you said you were drinking at work?
Yeah, there were a lot of jobs that I would do that. And there would be, like, I had a job at a hookah lounge where people were drinking anyway, so it was really easy to get away with. And probably like the most interesting one that I got away with was I had a job doing security where I would do the apartment security, who like drives around for your apartment for 2 minutes and then leaves or responds whenever you say I have a noise complaint or whatever. And I would just dip underneath the dash cam, take a shot, and then come back up and continue driving. And that was every single night. I would go to work at 6 p.m. and come back at 6 a.m. and always have my little alcohol in there with me. Just crazy what you can get away with confidence. You know what I mean? Like, I did what I was supposed to do, so nobody ever asked the wiser. And that worked out for me for a very long time.
You said you were an athlete too, right?
I was always interested in being an athlete, but I never really did too much. I did a bodybuilding competition when I was younger, and that one was always what struck me as the most interesting. And that's what I always kind of kept doing in my extreme alcoholism. But while doing that, it sort of makes bodybuilding very hard to, one, go to the gym, and two, keep a low enough body fat percentage. So it was always like, yeah, I still am. I'm going to do a show eventually. I'm just, you know, I would be 24 being like, I've just already peaked. You know, I'm like, this is just what older athletes look like now. You know, you have to try a lot harder when you're this old. And you're like, or it's the handle of vodka a day, you know, but it was never that.
Yeah, it's interesting because like you're thinking, oh, at 24, you're peaking. I was like, bro, there's a lot of 35, 40 people. So like, hitting PRs in like other sports, like in ours, you know, I took a class in coaching the aging athlete, and like the literature says like there's a bunch of 40-year-olds still improving, like hitting PRs galore.
Yeah, because they have all that time to like think about what they're doing as opposed to it just happening to them. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, there's something about just making that gap in time and really staying dedicated past the instant gratification.
What was the tipping point for you though?
At some point I started dabbling in not drinking. And I remember one time, it was early 2018, right around New Year's, because I started taking pictures. And I went to the gym and I didn't drink every day for 45 days. And that was the longest I had gone without drinking since I started drinking at 17. I always felt awful, but there were a couple times where I felt really awful, and eventually I went to the hospital, and my lipase levels, which is what they test for your pancreas, was a crazy high number that I don't even remember. It was something like 3,000 or higher than that. And it's supposed to be in the low hundreds. And once you have pancreatitis, it sort of is always compounding on top of that. And everybody would just explain to me, well, you can't drink. You can never, ever drink again. But they would never really explain why. And I knew, you know, oh, your pancreas. Well, that just means what? If my pancreas goes bad, I just have diabetes and then I just whatever and I'm fine. You know, like what's the worst case scenario of my pancreas shutting down? And maybe I never asked the right questions, but it was also just never explained to me past, just so you know, you have this now and you can't drink anymore. And even my parents would be like, I don't think that means that you can never drink again. You just can't drink right now until you're better, which seems crazy if you were talking about anything other than alcohol. It's okay, sweetie. You can do heroin again once you're better. And you're like, okay, thanks. And that's exactly how it feels now in the after of it, of just like, why were people, it was just so allowed and so something that's normal to go do it. Like it felt like every time we would go to dinner, I thought it was crazy that people weren't trying to drink with dinner and do everything. I thought that was the point. Like that's why we're excited to go out. And it was weird that nobody was sharing that excitement with me. And it seemed actually that I was bringing everybody down in that, it's, of course, oh, now Angie needs a drink for this. And the only thing she's thinking about is drinking. And even though I don't think that other people can see that, they definitely can see that. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I didn't say anything. What are you talking about? But it's almost like there's like a steam of need coming off of you at all times.
You said offline that you were hospitalized.
Yeah, that was with the pancreatitis. And that would be multiple trips where it's like 3 to 7 days of NPO, which is nothing through the mouth, no water, no food. During one of those trips, I did get a feeding tube, which is just a PICC line, and they go through in your underarm into a vein directly in your heart. And that's because...
That sounds nasty.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And they give you like a smoothie just so that you're getting calories in the day. But again, it bypasses your pancreas. And I was getting... procedures every 2 weeks to put stents in my pancreas to hold it open because I was just leaking fluid. At one point, I had 3 liters of pancreatic fluid drained from my abdomen. I remember getting out of bed and it just felt like rolling a water cooler, and it was not good. But all of that was just, oh, well, that's okay. This was just a fluke. Everything's fine. But I had a coworker and she was talking about her brother who was not doing so well. And she mentioned that he was dying. And then she mentioned that he had pancreatitis and was dying of that. And I went, oh, I'm really sorry that was happening to you. Could I ask what he's dying from? And she was like, absolutely. His entire GI system has gangrene and he's just dying and rotting from the inside out. And I went, oh, so there's like other ways other than your pancreas just going out. And because I'm like, we know how to fix a pancreas. But I'm like, oh, there's different modalities of death happening in these. There's a lot of pathways. And I think that was the first time that fear was instilled in me. But it all just seemed more like something I had to just like keep taking on. It was like everything was added to the pile, like, okay, well, I've been doing it like this, and now only when you have such a large pot of water and you add in one thing, it doesn't feel like that much, you know what I mean? So even after that, because all of those hospital trips were before my first attempt of sobriety as well, which ended up being a very interesting thing. I worked out so hard. I gave myself a hernia and had its good and bad qualities to it as far as going every day and doing what you need to do. But there was always still an allowance in my head. If I wasn't drinking, I was always like, well, I will be able to someday. Or if I was trying to prove that I wasn't drinking, it was always like, well, I can't be. There was a point where I was taking breathalyzer tests to prove to my parents, who I was living with after I moved out of my apartment briefly, and just trying to make sure that I'm staying sober. And I would take breathalyzers, get drunk, wait 8 hours, and take another breathalyzer. Like I knew the time it would take for me to get sober, or I just wouldn't come home that night, so I wouldn't have to take a breathalyzer or something like that.
That's wild.
And I would even tell you, these are all the ways that I hide drinking, but I would not tell you maybe 2 of the ways, so that just in case I really needed a drink, you wouldn't be able to catch me on those.
That being said, when you said when I really needed a drink, it's in the tip of my tongue.
I think I'm tracking, like, just like what's the tangible feeling of that need?
Yeah.
It was like a buzzing where, for instance, I went to my parents' house to go talk about their vacation to Georgia. And they wanted to show me pictures. And I just couldn't stay any longer than I had anticipated, because I had already given myself an allowance for when I needed a drink. And then by that time, it's the only thing I can think about now is getting a drink and you just keep talking and you keep making a point or whatever, and I just can't hear the next thing out of your mouth. I have to leave. I need a drink. It feels like a reach of something of, if I don't have something in both of my hands, this one's constantly looking for something to grab. And I was unable to sit with that feeling of needing something to grab, because it was almost like fixing an issue of, that's empty, I need to fill it. That thing, it needs to be filled. I have to fill it. It hasn't been filled yet. There is an opportunity for me to fill it, and it should be filled. And that's a little bit how it felt getting sober too, because that was the hardest part. Was everything I did had a caveat of, okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom and then take a shot, and then I would want to and be like, so it was constant every 10 minutes being like, nope, not right now, nope, also not right now, also not right now, also not right now. And gets a little tiring, but it's you getting comfortable with an empty hand.
Yeah, because in my case, when I first moved to Colorado, a bunch of my friends, they moved at the same time. So both their military, the PCS here at the same time. And we were like going out all the time. I mean, not all that, but a lot. Would be downtown, we'd be drinking, and I'd be coaching here, and it's like hot summer day, and I'm like, I'm thirsty. And I'm just like craving for that like Coors Light, just like, I wanted to drink. And I told my dad about it, and he told me like when he rarely drinks now, but like he was younger, he said he was addicted to it. So I was like, ooh, it might be. Because, like, I don't know if this is true, but I think I've read it somewhere, that it's hereditary.
I definitely think it can be. And I think that there's something to that. I think that there's a little bit of both of, like, being chemically addicted and being socially addicted and being hereditarily addicted and what you've just learned by being around. I think that it's all inclusive and all important. But really, all that I can focus on is, like, what are you doing right now? You know what I mean? So it's like, even if it is hereditary, you still have to work on it. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean, oh, well, guess that means I'm going to drink, I guess, because I'm a drinker. It just means there's an extra step in it, right? It's very interesting that you were cautious that soon. So you talked to your dad when you were like, it sounds really nice, is a very interesting, like, red flag and not a lot of people have that. Most people have, this sounds really nice. I think I should do that more often. This feels really good. I should be doing more of that thing. So it was interesting that you were like, this feels good, but not in the right way. And that's
back then too. It's like for athletic reasons. I was starting to compete as well. So I was starting to be cautious of it. We'll talk about that more later. Yeah, I think it's a good topic. It's a lot of people talking about. But for you specifically, what is the healing like in your case?
It was interesting. There were some failures. I mean, I think it took me from first attempt of sobriety to sobriety about a year. And there were just lots of opportunities. And of course, being so confident that I am fine. I know what I'm doing. I'm making the choice to drink. I'm doing these things. And to be like outwardly presenting is so okay that everybody believes you and goes along with that. So just, even though I knew making all these decisions of just, they always feel like this isn't over yet, was a big feeling that I didn't recognize again until way after, when you're like, oh, I can actually let that go. And it was always do I have to hide this right now? And learning that I didn't was a hard one for getting into there, because fighting those impulses every 10 minutes really makes a struggle. But that's where it kind of just becomes into the steps that you're taking. I always say, gauge your danger level. I was dying. I was in the hospital, and I was getting put under every 2 weeks for those stents, and I was still drinking and doing all of that. And alcohol was killing me. It wasn't just something that was inconveniencing me. So with people when it's inconveniencing them, I always say, you're looking for reduction, not perfection. Do less, make more gaps, make bigger decisions. Like, if you do want it, can you think, oh, well, I had it yesterday, so I can't have it tomorrow? Can you think, can you stop for 30 minutes? Or how long is it between you wanting that beer and reaching into the fridge? And just creating a gap is going to be the big ones, because even 30 failures and 1 success is way better than not even trying. And that makes such a big difference. Of even all of those failures of you being like, I really want a beer, I'm not going to do it, I'm doing it. Like, that was one practice round. You know what I mean? You now learned what it was like to feel like doing it, even in the most briefest moments of not getting it the moment that you wanted it, and then what it felt like to fail, and then possibly not enjoy, I'm sorry, not what it feels like to succeed and get what you want and not enjoy getting what you want.
You said this is what's standing out. You said that was a practice round. Is that kind of like one?
Yeah, like one rep, you got one, you're in like working out. It's, I want you to go do 10 power cleans or something. And today I want you to say no 10 times. It doesn't matter if that 10 times happens in 20 minutes because you had that impulse that many times. But if you can be like, no, next time, and then you go do dishes and you're like, I really want it again, then you can maybe figure that out. A little bit easier when you're talking about maybe quitting vaping or something that's just kind of around you all day, every day. And even just making your world a little bit smaller. I say try to live within 3 days. If you went out for beers 2 days ago, sorry, man, I just got to do something else. Maybe let's get up in there tomorrow and let's do this, because that's where it comes from, wanting it for yourself and not other people. Because if your goal is to feel better and your goal is to have longevity, athletically speaking, and do all of those things, of course, not drinking today or tomorrow makes a lot of sense. And in those 3 days, you're going to be okay with that. And if you can just pause for like as long as you can, whether that's a day, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's putting the vape in the corner of the room, whether it's hiding things from yourself, or putting something in a box with a lock in it. Anything that has to do with just stopping, because
You said, yeah, exactly. Oh, you said pause, not stop.
Yes. Pause and observe. And you can do whatever you want to with that information. And it's sort of that a habit is only a habit until you realize that you have it. And then it's a choice. Because once you realize, man, every time I walk past the vape, I hit vape, then you're choosing to hit the vape. If it's something that you don't know you're doing, like I just keep tripping on something, that's a whole different habit or something like that. But I can tangibly feel the don't do it as I'm reaching for something. And if you can even hear that in the back of your mind, I always try to listen to that voice of, if I'm going for it, because there's a lot of voices going, yeah, I want that thing. That thing sounds awesome. But if I even hear, don't do it. I gotta wait. And so that helps get time in the water where, okay, I've been exposed to needing now for that amount of time. And I've really made a decision now when I absolutely want it. And I think that that's a really important step in growing and learning. Like somatics is super important for that too, like with athletics and speaking. That's how you just kind of need to know your body's limits.
Somatics.
Right. So listening to your body, a lot of us have, lots of thoughts going on in our head, but then there's something of there's sometimes that need that creates tension in your body, and all of those, if you can start listening to that, things start to slow down and those pauses become a little bit easier. Because if you are reaching for your addiction and your heart's racing and you're feeling kind of sweaty and you're feeling super hesitant, maybe pause. If you're going, I'm out right now. I've been really good all week and I just want to have a beer on the lake with the boys. I've been good all week. That's fine. If you aren't, man, I woke up hungover this morning and the boys are going out tonight and I have to go do that. It's making longer decisions, because you're deciding even just 3 days is better, because I can't decide past the moment in active addiction. It is, yes, that's what I'm going to do. And so that's why you just want to start creating gaps, because the goal is a really long gap and that seems long. But if I can make a step, okay, I made it here, okay, and then I did it. Okay, I got this far, okay, I got it. But now I have all of this experience getting closer to my goal, and that adds up in time.
I feel like that takes off the pressure too of just like going from being addicted to not addicted. It's like, it's kind of like saying, I'm a beginner, I'm going to go to the Olympics tomorrow. It's like, that doesn't happen.
Exactly. And even just the knowledge of it, of you're in California, go to New York. Good luck. And not knowing the route of it. And that's usually the hardest part, is we can all get from California to New York, but most of us don't know how to do that without a map and other external resources. And so if you can figure out, okay, if I'm in California, what's my first step? Then that's where it becomes a little bit easier. And a lot of times the first step is wait. You know what I mean? Even if it's a couple seconds, there's a crosswalk there. You know what I mean? I know you want to get across the street, but you have to wait until the light switches. And but there's no cars coming. But right now, What you're doing is following the rules. And that's something that I always try to remember when I'm convincing myself that I do want the thing. Even if you're right, that's not what we're doing right now. And right now I'm trying to stop quitting XYZ. So I don't get it this time. That's when it starts just like creating levels for yourself of what can you do? What do you want to do? Because if you're quitting for other people, then it's not going to matter because your only thing is, well, what's going to impress Clint? What can I do today to stop drinking that's going to impress Clint? Well, I'm going to get really tired of doing that, especially if I have to impress you every single time. I'm going to run out of tricks. As opposed to me grinding, it's no different than being an athlete of, I got to do the boring work. Right now we're on a deload and I can't do the big, fun, super heavy pulls, but I get to. And even though you feel really good while you're deadlifting, doing these other ones, you're like, I know I could put more on the weight. You're like, but I know why I can't, because there's science behind me needing this break. And so once you understand, the route becomes clear. There's a saying that says, leap and the net will appear. And I think that that's a very important one for confidence, because you just have to. There's never going to be a right time. It's never going to feel safe. You just have to see what it feels. And one of the hardest parts is committing to that. And that's why I always say, you can also jump out of the water. You know what I mean? If you dip your toes in, that's cool. The water will still be there for you when you're ready to come back in a little bit more.
So the pause, not stop, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're pausing at some point, what's the appropriate behavior or attitude towards a setback?
Oh, I do everything. I always approach everything with an attitude of, I guess. And it always hurts really bad at the time of, I guess I don't get to do that right now. I guess that's what I've decided, and that's the rule. I say a lot to myself, which may or may not be helpful, but it makes me laugh every time. Sucks to suck. And so it just means that I don't get to rationalize, well, you just don't need that right now, because something is going to say, well, I do need that right now. And in this time I need it because of this reasons. And I'm like, it's gone. It doesn't exist. You don't get one. Is a good thing to remember. It doesn't always work in longevity, but it's just a good thing to keep in mind of. This time, no. Because that's what happened when I finally got sober. I drove to the liquor store and I stopped outside of it and I said, shaky breath, I think I'm not going to do it this time. And then I made that decision again. It's now 2,373 days in a row. And so it becomes a lot easier, and there's a lot of different reasons to keep going now than there was to start, but it was just because I said I would was a helpful one.
When a relapse happens, right, would you say you're not really starting from zero? You're starting at a higher baseline?
Yeah, you get a little bit of experience, and then something to even put some relaxing to falling back into it is you get to learn that. Almost everybody who rehabs is like, this has been the worst week of my life. I'm so tired and I just wake up and I can't stop drinking. And they always get into this. They've learned to hate it, where it took me 10 years to learn how to hate drinking. Now, maybe if I were to start, I would 100% go balls to the walls and drink way too much, but I could potentially get sick of it in just a couple months now, because now they've had a taste of what reality is, and so suddenly that was our entire life. And when we've been outside of it, even if we have such a gravitational pull that we can't stop thinking about it, we go back in and we can see now everything else that we left. And so now there's instead of me just looking into this ball, there's okay, over here. So now there's a heavier weight on the other side of the scale now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's I don't know if you listen to Huberman, Andrew Huberman.
Sometimes.
Yeah, it's he talk about the anterior mid-cingulate cortex or something like that. Yeah, the part of the brain that's responsible for grit. If you're doing something that you really don't like, that grows. And you become super resilient. And what you're trying to say, to me, was when you're saying when you go through all that reps, right, of pausing, which is longer, and you relapse, that's why I asked, is it really you're not really starting from zero again. You have that part where you got better at it. Now you can actually start from a higher baseline.
Exactly. Just like jumping rope. If you hit your ankles, you're not I guess I've never skipped rope before. It's well, you just circumstances happened and something else happened and now you stopped doing that. And so, yeah, approaching it with grace and gentleness helps a lot. Of if a friend were to come to you and be like, man, I'm like only lifting 5 pounds more this week, you'd be like, that's awesome. Yeah. And so you have to remember to think that way for yourself too, of, man, I used to never be able to say no to something 3 times in a row. And now I can. Like, now I can at least, because then you kind of get into, oh, this is what it feels like when I say yes and I don't want it. Oh, this is what it feels like when I say yes and I do want it. Oh, this is what it feels like when I kind of don't want it, but I did it and now I didn't want it. And so you get a little bit more wiggle room into this, because all of our emotions need to be pointed, singular pointed, especially happiness is going to be singular pointed. And if on the way to happiness you have all of these extra spikes, we can't quite get into that point because you're still experiencing this and you're still experiencing this, as opposed to the thing that makes, like at a wedding, whether you're needing to experience your daughter getting married, but you're too busy wondering if you can have another drink, or if people are thinking that you're drinking too much. And, you know, that's the only thing you're thinking about on the best day, when maybe people aren't even noticing you drinking that. And that's the other way of, like, you could not be dying and it's still a problem. You know, if it's haunting you, it's something to consider.
Let's go on a tangent, because you mentioned wedding.
Yes.
So it's one of my questions. What happened at that wedding that you went to with Chris?
That was just one of those very interesting, because it was probably the first public large group drinking activity that I went to after ever trying to become sober. And so now it's like, no, I'm fine. I can just handle it now. Cut to wedding and trying to be everybody. You want a shot? Are you ready to have a shot? There's shots in here. We have all this. And just, especially, everybody seems to be, there's the life of the party and everybody's having a lot of fun with you and everybody's fist bumping you and giving shots. And so you have to keep taking them. And then it just turns into sitting down at the wedding and apparently choosing not to wear underwear and falling off of the stool and, you know, just causing fights between family members. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I apparently didn't bring the right underwear for my dress. And I was trying to be super helpful and take pictures even though they had a photographer. And yeah, it was, and then just hiding from people. And it's always just trying to justify it, because every moment always felt like it was about to be that. So every time everything went wrong, it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know what I mean? Because I have the ability to be like, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's this awesome, exciting thing, alcohol happening. That's the priority. As opposed to everybody's like, no, there's like things going on and people, and we have lives, and there's a hotel room, and there's a whole other thing that's happening, where I'm like, yeah, and we're supposed to be drunk. And it just, there's a lot of growing up that has to happen. I did feel emotionally stunted by alcohol from like the time that I started. And then by the time that I stopped at 27, it was like, I think I'm still a 17-year-old, because I just stopped thinking about anything else. And so that sort of makes you do a lot of weird, silly shit when you're in your mid-20s and too old to be doing that stuff. And it feels correct, because you feel you've been told your whole life, wow, you're so mature for your age and you have everything going on for you and everything's perfect. So you're like, yeah, I'm doing everything right. You're the one who's not doing it right and not enjoying yourself properly or whatever. You just can't handle it properly. I can. And so every time it's like, people just don't understand how good I am at handling this. And that becomes a whole separate problem.
So you mentioned, I think this relates to that. You mentioned earlier that, like, impressing other people. Is there a certain program or a mental code that you can instill in yourself to say, I don't want to like care about what other people are thinking right now, because I need to focus on myself?
Yeah, because I mean, there's a very real human feeling, because we don't have to, I'm not being threatened by plague or bears or lions or anything. I'm more threatened by being ostracized from my society at this point. So any dislike I get from you is a threat to me. And so if I can monitor your facial cues and whatever you're saying and predict what you're going to say next and do all of the things that you seem to like when I do them around you, then I'm going to continue to be that person around you. And especially if all of my motivation is external into, well, I'm going to do this because everybody thinks that I can do this and everybody tells me that I can do this and I can do this. And it's just, you tend to lose a lot of steps and a lot of space when you take yourself out of the equation, because there's a lot of benchmarks on where you can be, what you're doing. I did this, there's a lot of chips. There's 30-day chips, 45, or this might be a 45-day chip, 60-day chips. All of these chips that you can get that count as bookmarks of where you've been, but they get a little bit smaller and less exciting to share, and you need to keep that for yourself. When you're like saying, I just got sober and I'm a year sober, does sound a little bit different than like, yep, I'm still sober 6 years later or whatever, which of course is a whole different thing excitingly, but it's like, if you need to figure out why you're doing it, and that's when it helps if you have health reasons or things like that, because my reason and why I kept failing was just because my drinking is frustrating everybody around me and I don't want them to be frustrated anymore. But it was the only thing bringing me joy. So it was like really hard to stop doing that when it's the only thing that I don't have any solid relationships. My relationship with my boyfriend wasn't very good and I was very isolated. I didn't have any friends. So it was just, what else am I going to do? If I can't do this, I have nothing, is how it felt, and a little bit of how real it is. Of course, I had blinders on, so that makes a big difference of what I can see around me, but that's where it comes from. Leo Tolstoy has a quote that says, boredom is the desire of desires. And so that's where that gap is you just need to feel what it feels like to long for something. And that's an okay way to feel. I'm a big proponent of general misery. I think that there's always going to be a little bit of a ship that's always got to be working hard inside of you, and that's what makes the little things that much better, is because my ship is working really, really hard, but there's daisies and they exist, and that brings me happiness. But when there are no daisies and it's just you and your ship in the open water, you're going to find the only thing that's available to you, or that to bring that, your own daisies, because it just gets really rough to find anything. And especially when you get into a rut and that's the only way that to do anything. And that's the only thing that you can do, especially when you get stuck to something that's going to chemically alter you as well. Because everything that we're talking about is all just identifying yourself and wants and needs, let alone the fact that these things are chemically making it impossible for you to put it down. They are chemically making you think about them more, So like, that's a whole different story outside of that, because you're not just being, why do I suck at this? Because everything's against you. It's not your fault. You are just becoming aware of all the problems around you, and now they feel like a lot, is sort of how it feels, I used to just have one problem, was drinking, and now there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but that one problem, drinking, was so much heavier than all of the other problems I have in sobriety. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you mentioned boredom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm guessing there's a hump where you get to a point where like, I'm getting clean. Now I'm bored. What should I be passionate about now? Where do I go from here?
Yeah.
How do you get through that?
That's why you need a big reason of why. I need to do this while it's fun because I'm stimulated by impressing Clint, because that will wear off. It needs to be oh yeah, this is what I'm doing, because it totally, absolutely comes to that of, even when I look into it now, it's like, it used to be, ooh, another 500 days. Ooh, another 500 days. And now as you get more up into that, it's like, oh, it's still kind of close to the same number that I remember looking at, because it's just in that area. So it feels less of a prize, even though it is more of a prize. Just the fact that dopamine hit gets smaller. And that's kind of what, as addicts, we're searching for. It's just like, I need more. I need more hot sauce. I need more speed. I need more everything that I can get. More of it, please. And when you have something that's on a very set schedule, it's not going to happen any faster. There's no shortcut. Like, you can't do anything to get any bigger. You can't do anything to get any faster. You can't do anything to get any more days sober, except sit in it. And there's just something about the stillness that I always say, I felt like a big paint mixer. And you like try to add in a couple drops of a different color, but it just mixes it all in with the other colors. And that's how I felt for so long. And then now there's just calming it down. Now I'm like a rumbling paint mixer.
Yeah, it's like, what other frameworks do you use for like getting clean?
As far as frameworks, I always just kind of say, do what works for you. I really like the 3 days for starting, because what I always think that everybody needs is 90 days will change your life. There's even at Alcoholics Anonymous, they suggest 90 meetings in 90 days, which I totally understand and I did not do. When I felt like I had that a little bit when I was going to the gym for those first 45 days. So that's where it kind of becomes helpful for athletes is a lot of times that 90 meetings in 90 days is to set up a feeling of routine and discipline that a lot of people don't have. But athletes do. We always, I don't want to go to do leg day now, and we're still at the gym going to do it, and we're still doing those things. So we have that drive to do things that we don't want to do for a greater good. And if you can remember that, that helps you a lot. And so if you can stay within those 3 days of, if you have a hard time making a decision multiple times a day, whether it's if it's drinking, if it's vaping or something like that, just try to set in a 3-day schedule. It's very doable and it leaves you a lot of wiggle room, which feels very comfortable. And then that way, if you're going for longevity, that's where I always say start with. And then go into 90 days. I think that if you even make a 90 anything commitment, and that's why is it great for me or any athlete to go to the gym 90 days in a row and push themselves as hard as they can and do whatever they want? No, but that's not what I was doing at that moment. I was trying to stay in the gym and be healthier and stop drinking. That was number one goal, was stop drinking. And I needed something to go do every day. So every day I would get up, go to the gym, come home, eat my food, go to work, and then go to sleep. And that was what I did for 90 days because I knew that if I didn't find something to do, if I don't do something for 3 days, I'm going to stop doing it. If I do something for 3 days, I'll probably, if I don't want to do it on the fourth day, I'll be like, but then what? I just did it for 3 days. What? For nothing? So it's always, there's that feeling of sunk cost fallacy. Helps a lot with that, where you're like, man, you're already 2 days in, you have to keep going 3 days. Really helps with that because that's what did keep me sober through that was even just, it felt like getting a game chip, of, okay, if I am sober today, January 12th, 2019, and something that haunted me was failing and for the rest of my life being, even if, say I did fail and I failed of June of that year, even if I was successful all the way up until now, I would still be like, yeah, but I would have been 6 months more sober if I didn't do that one thing. And that stopped me a lot of the time to just be like, ooh, I have to sit there and think about that every day for the rest of my life. Not today. And again, that just helped make that decision again because I made it 2 years now of just, I don't want to today. And then suddenly there was like, if I do it today, now there's more lost into just drinking because now I have placed value on this time slot, which is good.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a bunch of, I'm not going to do it today, like a bunch of 1 days. Mm-hmm. You just like stringing up together. I mean, it's like, yeah, kind of like what I was saying earlier. It's just like that 1 day. It doesn't look really impressive when you put it in under a microscope, but when you like zoom out, it's like, that's a lot of, I'm not going to do that 1 day. Mm-hmm. Strung together.
Yeah, if you can even get those calendars, because if you see those ones where it's like, if you failed 7 times this month, that sounds like a lot, but then you can look at how many days that is, and it's like, that's 23 wins. You know what I mean? So if you can make a calendar, I don't mind failing as long as I'm aware of it. You know what I mean? I actually found it very interesting. I even talked to my therapist about like quitting vaping, and I was like, I'm kind of like a little sad because what am I going to do? Like all I do is I'm so intrigued by my brain thinking about these things that I'm like, but I want to know what it feels like if I do it like this. And I want to know what it feels like if I do it like this. And so that becomes the interesting because that's where boredom comes from. Is there nothing to do or is there nothing that interests you? And that's where people look for externals. There's nothing interesting around me, so this is interesting. Drinking is interesting. So I'm going to keep doing that. And if you're not in an environment that feeds you, you'll feed it with whatever's around. And that it's got some high potency in there, you know what I mean? Of that dopamine that's going to hit all the things that you need to do, but it affects you in the long run, which it helps you not think about. And so it's just this perpetual cycle.
You said environment. Talk more about that.
Whatever environment you surround yourself is going to be what you grow into, like a plant, whatever example behooves you to use. It's like how I grew up and my parents looked forward to every weekend. That seemed like the point for me. That was the win. That was why you work every week, was so that because you have to pay rent and you have to do all of these other things that you don't want to do, but your prize for doing it is this thing, which it looks great. I mean, all of the commercials on the TV tell me to drink and it's awesome and everybody looks hot and amazing while they're drinking and they're having such a great time. But me, it's just sitting in a dirty apartment by myself, alone and lonely, and making it worse. But it feels good because that's just what I've been doing for 10 years. And even now, like, I have only been sober for 6 years, and I can't imagine not doing what I've been doing for 6 years, let alone for 10 years. You're just so ingrained into that it's hard to rip you out of that groove when you've worn it so far deep. And that's why it's always you also can't wait for a high part in the groove because you're only going down. And so that's why I'd say you can't wait until, I have a reason now or something like that. It has to just be, that's why I say this time, no. I don't care what you do next time, but this time, no. And then make your own decisions from there.
Mm-hmm. What's it like to be alcohol free?
It's pretty cool. One thing that I thought I would have an issue with is like being around people while they're drinking and thinking that I would really want to, like the way that when I was still drinking, even in secret, if you had a beer in front of you, the way that I'd be like, is he going to finish that? Can I finish mine yet? Can I have an order? Can I order another one? Can I do this or that? I felt like it would just be something that was haunting me. But it's funny how many times that we're out now drinking with people and I'll just be like, yeah, that person was kind of acting weird. And he'll remind me that they were drinking and I go, oh yeah, I forget that it exists. Even if I see you pouring a bottle, like I forget that it's not just Kool-Aid and that as you're drinking, it's affecting you. And it's very different on the outside.
Is it?
Just to kind of watch and see it. And I love it too. I think it has its own place. I still love everybody to drink. Ron White has a great way of putting it, which is just, I drank all of my alcohol already. That's it. I don't get any more. You get born with a certain amount of alcohol and I drank all of mine. My bank is empty. Please, everybody else can drink as much as they want. And I think it has a place and I think it's for fun. I just can't. And so, like, it has a tool, and some people get to have fun with it, but some people it's not worth it.
Mm-hmm. Well, nowadays, I mean, because I'm subscribed to like a statistics newsletter, and they're like talking about some of the younger generations not drinking as much as our generation. And like, I had a conversation with the guy who was here. He was like, yeah, my kids, like, they vape, they smoke, but like, they don't drink. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty interesting because like the generation before us, they smoked, right? Like even in the plane, you know, and there's like sections in buildings where they did drink. I mean, they did smoke, and now like for us, it's like it's us now. We're in our case, the younger ones are stopped. They're not drinking as much, and for me, it's like for athletic reasons. But I don't know what it is for the younger ones.
I don't know either, but I would my anecdotal idea of that is also just these new generations. I love the way that they think and they're so compassionate. I love watching Gen Z like stick up for other people and they'll just shove a bully out of their face or out of somebody else's face in a second, and it's my favorite and I feel really good for it. And so I think that they have this, I think that there's a peak, right, of we allowed all of that smoking and drinking became so normalized and then it became an issue, and I think that that's when that generation became born. So now because my parents were not like me drinking, where my parents did not wake up and drink every day. I think a lot of kids saw their parents wake up and drink every single day. And I mean, my parents drank when they got home and did whatever, had a couple beers at night. They were never it was not like a weird abusive bottles are getting thrown or anything. They were just socializing often. But I think that, for example, if I were to have a kid at 21, they would have watched me sleep on the couch way too much, get too drunk in the middle of the day, everywhere, pee on the floor, do everything. It was do the most embarrassing things and the worst things. And I think that they take that, so they get a gross idea from that. My parents were just celebrating and having fun at an allotted time. But when it gets a lot serious, which it does, and then people have kids and they are in those situations, I feel very lucky to not have had a kid while I was in that, because it would have been another couple of years before I became sober and would have even been able to pay attention to that kid properly, let alone myself. And so,
because at that point you're not just worrying. It's not just your life; it's somebody else's now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and when you're in active addiction, it's how I was saying that everything just felt like another thing to hold on to. That's what a kid would be. If I had a kid in active addiction, well, I'm good. I have to keep going on, but now I have this, and so it makes it. And it's a sad and it's a very selfish and awful thing for people to do, but it is a reality for a lot of young children to be, you know, they come home and their mom is drunk, pass out on the floor, and they have to cook dinner for this. And so, you know, they're just like, I'm not drinking. And I think that that's a very poignant and great observation, because it got to a point of just being, oh, you know, my mom's a stay-at-home mom in the 50s, and she just gets drunk while she just drinks a little bit of wine to the day. There's something different about a bottle to the face kind of an addiction, where you are just barely living. And everything that happens to you is not something that you're doing. It's just something that is happening to you, how it feels. And so they're just going to keep moving forward while doing everything that they've been doing. And nothing can stop them. And those kids get trapped that way. And so it's a good observation for that. But I think both ends are a little bit, because now if they're not aware of decent sides of it, it becomes, I think education is where it becomes important.
Yeah. And it's the bad thing about that too, is like sometimes you don't know how optimal you're not living. Like you're living in a suboptimal state, like with relationships, or with, I guess in our case, like in sports, you know, in
Right.
athletics, you know, you feel like it's relaxing. That's the thing about it. It's just, it's nice in my case, like I like the taste of whiskey, and I just like
Okay.
sipping it just a little bit every night, you know, like my wild turkey a while ago. Just like,
That's so interesting.
it's, yeah, just sipping, like, well, like, you know, at night it's just so relaxing.
I hated alcohol. I hated the flavor of every single alcohol.
Interesting.
It was all, yeah, pass. That's why I find it so interesting, is because I hear that a lot from a lot of course, there are many alcoholics who enjoy and appreciate alcohol, but a lot of us are just whatever's strongest as quick as possible. And that was always the goal. Is I don't care what it is. I could never, ever, ever even still understand one beer with dinner, because gross, there's better tasting options, and you're not going to get drunk off that one beer. What are we doing? And so that's always that line too of, oh, I'm an alcoholic. That's why I think that way. You know, that's where it kind of is able to have that nuance of, is it hereditary? Is it this? Is it the way that I'm thinking or something? Sometimes it's nice to have that stop of, why can't I stop thinking about this? Oh, because I think about this way. Oh, because it's in my bloodline. Or when people get diagnosed with like PTSD or anything like that, it sometimes feels like a label, but it's like, it's just more of an asterisk for people. So it's like, if you can just remember that it's not everything that you're doing, but that it follows you, but it's not in front of you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. How does it help you with your, now, how does it help you? Because you look really, well, you look fit. You know, like, how does it help you with your athleticism now?
It definitely helps a lot, where just because getting out of bed was hard. And I mean, I even used that even while I was going to the gym as few times as I did in active addiction, especially in that apartment. It was always like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the gym now so that I can drink tonight, kind of a thing. And it just became something that I was just convinced that I could outlift without trying that hard, you know, a bottle of alcohol every day. And it just gets a little messy when you do start kind of allowing yourself, because time went so fast, because I'd be like, I went to the gym yesterday. And then I would not go to the gym for 3 months, and it still felt like I went to the gym last week. But it was just because everything is running into the same thing. I'm not doing anything. So it is basically the same day over and over again. And so I'm just jumping back into same timelines, and it just makes it a lot harder to stay aware when you're like that.
Yeah, I haven't had a drink since maybe December or something like that.
That's awesome.
Even whenever I have a drink, now that I'm like eating a little bit cleaner, you know, and trying to be like, you know, perform a little better in the gym, it's just, I really hate the feeling of feeling sluggish for 2 days or even 3 days. I don't like, this is crap. I don't like this at all. That's why I don't drink. Maybe when I get home, like if there's a birthday, I'll probably like have 1 or 2 beers.
Totally.
But like, I just,
you know, you're going to pay for it.
yeah, I don't like that, you know?
It does get that struggle with, because there's that tolerance, right? You were drinking and you were kind of getting tired of it, but it's sort of like, wow, this plant grew in this parking lot, and it like just got nothing for it, and it still grew. But then you have a plant that you've babied for a while, but then you pour like a little bit of tap water on it, and it doesn't do well anymore. And that's all just like your tolerance, right? It's because you're like, yeah, I was only like drinking once a week or so, but it's like your body's still I think there's something about like 90 days, your body's still metabolizing alcohol until it gets completely out of your system, and then your body's kind of reset. And it's like you're just topping it off all of the time when you do that. And if you're really looking for those health benefits, that's when you really want to start to pay attention, because it's like when you're shopping for a multivitamin. You're not going to take a multivitamin and go, this one, I feel amazing. This is the multivitamin. Like I've never felt it. It's just going to be a multivitamin that's going to fill in the gaps. And that's kind of going to be the one that how that's going to feel for you is you just need to do what's working for you. And whether that means beers only socially for special events or making decisions, if you can make those proper decisions, it just kind of depends on your threshold and what you've been giving yourself. Because like you said, how you've been eating healthy now, and now you're like, I can like look at a beer and it starts to make me feel bad. I mean, your body knows that too. It's the same way of if there's like a snake in the room and you don't know it, everybody's kind of like, something's wrong. Like your body is aware of patterns and also what that means for you. They're like, I know what beer means. I know where this is. And it's going to preemptively start to get uncomfortable for you now. And that's even what I was kind of saying about the relapsing is that's why now, you were drinking and you couldn't not think about those cores. And now it's been 6 months and you're like, that sounds really gross. Is you have to get to that point of like, sometimes you have to do it so much until you hate it. It's like, as you're doing it, God, I don't want to be hitting this vape anymore. God, I don't want to be drinking this beer anymore. That's a great place to start. If you can get there, then that's an easy feed to. Then don't, because that immediately feels good. But if you're stopping just to impress whoever, then it doesn't feel good when you've not drinking, when nobody knows and nobody sees. You know what I mean? It's very interesting because you get trapped a little bit because you start to play mind games where it's like, well, I can do this. I can do a little bit of this, but then the second you get in those reins, there's no turning back,
I feel like for me, for something like that, like meditation can probably help. I mean, this is going out in tangent because like the reason why I started meditating a while ago, I hated meditation to begin with because it's like it's got this like woo thing. It's like no, before I didn't like the woo spirituality behind it, or I'd be listening, but this is like YouTube days where I'll like be listening to like what's it, the guide, the person guiding you, yeah, and I'm like, be one with the universe and align your chakra, and I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? I'm a guy too, so I'm like, I think differently, right? Yeah, so that was one of the things that just wasn't helping. But when this monk, he went like meditated with monks, and he explained it in scientific ways, where like thoughts are just thoughts come with emotions, and when you see a thought, all you got to do is try don't worry about putting emotions. It's like meditation is kind of like severing the thoughts with emotions, so that you won't freak out over like single thoughts that are like happened already before. So like I think for something like that, where like when you make a mistake, when you relapse, like okay, that happened, now move on.
It's always really hard. For me, it wasn't okay, you stopped, you relapsed, now move on. It was, okay, you relapsed because of this. There's many branches behind it, and there's lots of reasons behind it. Because I heard all of those meditation things. Just be like a water and watch the leaves flow by you. And I'm like, cool, but I have object permanence and those leaves still exist and I'm still thinking about them and they're still going off. And so it's so hard. I never, ever got that. My biggest thing is going to be go to therapy. I would not be anywhere that I was. I mean, I started therapy 2 or 3 years ago only. But it really made a big difference as far as like me gathering my emotions in my own body. Because I went into therapy saying, which is interesting, as an alcoholic, I said, I don't know what it feels like to want anything. I said, I know what it feels like to know what you want me to do and know what those things are, but I don't know what I want. Because it would be like, Angie, do you want this car or this car? And I'd be like, I don't know. What do you think? And I want to make the right decision, but I don't know what that is, because I don't know how to feel what wanting is. And so that's where like that meditation comes in, because I'm so convinced, because they tell you all of these thoughts, and then there's the watcher and the observer and things like that did not make any sense to me for a long time, because I'm like, nope, this is what I'm thinking, and I know what I'm thinking, and I'm aware of exactly my choices. And that is where it becomes I can't just move on from it, because it isn't just that. There's like an extra reason, or I can't let go of that thing. I will constantly still keep thinking about that thing. And I think that's where a lot of everybody's different neurodivergent things change. Because like if my ADHD can't handle thinking about something for very long, if I've only been exposed to short form content, then I can't think about tomorrow, let alone if I'm not going to drink today. You know what I mean? And it just becomes, it's all momentum. And that's why I say just pause. And that's why I say I don't care if you do it again in 10 minutes. I don't care if you do whatever it is. But if you can just begin to want to pause, that's gonna really like jumpstart you into feeling a lot of things that you were missing, because it's easy to fix a solution, but it's harder to understand why that's happening. Because, you know, oh, I need this thing, I want this thing, I have this thing, it's easy to do it. But it's like when you can be like, what is it that I want? That was the big one about the vape. Was I was like, I don't even think I want anything. I just need stimulation. And it was like, why do I need stimulation? Because I'm bored, you know? And so it's like, because even sure, if it's, well, they always say emotions only last chemically in your body about 90 seconds. So if you can not do it, but I struggle with, okay, but I'm thinking about vaping every 30 seconds. And so it's like, where does this all come in? And it's like, all of those thoughts kind of restart. And if you can, exactly what you said, it was almost a trained thing of now I can kind of, those feelings feel like thoughts coming into the side. And I can almost be like, no, no, no. I have to almost out loud sometimes interrupt them, or sometimes verbally say things out loud to myself, because otherwise it just feels like circling the drain of a thought, and it'll just keep coming back up and keep coming back up and keep coming back up until you make it real, if you write it or whatever. Because the second I say, I guess I do really need to drink or hit a vape right now, I can actually go, well, I can suddenly defend that because it's real now.
So you use actions. You use the external stuff to make the internal better. Something like
100%, because there's a lot of science into movement, and that's where the somatics comes in, where it always sounds silly, but it's like when you have that feeling of I need to do this thing, I end up like touching my chest a lot is very comforting. Some people kind of shake their arms a lot. It's usually just movement. And again, that's where being an athlete comes into. If you've got these really big buildups of emotion, you know how to get out large amount of extra. But where we struggle is with like, okay, but I'm in my car and I'm struggling. What can I do about that? And that's all about going to be finding things for you, and noticing the things that don't help you. For example, there's a study about rumination, and if you sit with your eyes and you're just staring into one thing, you're going to kind of circle the drain. But even if you just move your eyes from side to side and just kind of stay in that plane, you're just like jumping from thought to thought. Like your brain can't go, I'm still thinking about this thing. I'm thinking about this thing, this thing. Oh yeah, that thing's still there. I'm thinking about this thing and this thing and this thing. And it helps a lot too.
Isn't there like a therapy technique that you go back and forth with your eyes?
EMDR. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that it? Or is that something like that? Or
I'm sure they're all linked. There's a lot of EMDR has one. Alex Huberman even talks about my favorite therapy style, which is ISF, which is internal family systems. And that's where you sort of end up feeling what these feelings are. Because it has nothing to do with your family. The family is all of the beings and the emotions inside of you. And that desire to do things because you want to impress people is because of a reason, right? And that's all about finding it. And so there's a whole process of it where you will sit with yourself and kind of, you have to do it with a little bit of humility and curiosity to say, like, can I talk to this feeling right now? And again, there's something about that. I can think about a problem so many times, but saying it out loud really makes it, of just saying those things out loud to yourself that your body's never heard before. I remember the first time I did it, I said, do you mind if I talk to you? And everything in my body froze, as if I was that feeling. And she felt like nobody had ever asked her a question before. Like, she's like, I've always been talking and screaming, but you're the first person to look at me. And like, I was able to fully, tangibly feel that. And, you know, to be like, oh, well, that's where you kind of confront from, well, this feeling feels like every time that anybody's around that I have to make sure that they like me, because otherwise if I don't, I feel this way. And it all just, it's narrowing it down, you know, because these feelings now in your adulthood especially are all like the opposite of that cone. And so you're feeling it from up here, but it's like, but where did it start? Like, where did you, because all of these things, shame and hatred, they're all learned behaviors, you know? So where did you learn yours and how is a very important like stepping stool. Because if that's what makes you feel bad and you were never learned how to resolve things, you know, if your parents were like, go to your room until you feel normal, you're taught that anger is not normal. And so you're taught to just like, oh, this is a bad feeling. Every time I feel this, I should not feel it anymore. And then you never learn how to, your body needs cycles. And so when you get amped up, you can't just go, oh, I don't want to be this way anymore, and then decide not to. It's like there's still a whole, you preheated that oven and now you have to at least let it cool off or bake a cake or do something with it. But like you can't just turn off the oven and it's as if it were no longer on. And you have to remember that of like, that's why it's so hard sometimes of, okay, I didn't think about it long enough. Why am I still thinking about it again? It's like, you're cooling down. And if I could, even in those moments, notice it's probably not as bad as it was 30 seconds ago. I'm just still thinking about it. You know, I'm just holding on to that leaf in this 30 seconds as opposed to being like, oh, I saw it, but I wanted it.
Is it similar to like dumping your thoughts on paper?
A little bit. I always found that very struggling with me because every time that I would start to do that, I'd put the pen to the paper and just not even know where to start because my brain is going so much faster. So usually I would start with intent, I guess, is a good way to start with that of like, what am I saying? What am I doing? Of even just as simple as that of if you are in the moment of struggling of it, I want to drink right now. That just starting writing is going to like give you momentum and be like, because I want this, or if so that I want this. And if I drink today, it means that I don't get to do this. Pen, sometimes I write things and it's just X on paper. I'll just like scribble on the paper just because sometimes you're like, oh wait, actually I just thought of this or something like that because I'm constantly thinking about what I'm about to do, whether it's if I'm in the house, I'm like, okay, I gotta do dishes, I've got to feed my cat, I've got to do these other things, I've got to do these other things. But and that sort of dilutes my thinking process because it's all like a background option and I'm not like experiencing those things. It's almost like I can check back on it later. That's because I'm doing the dishes and doing these other things. But if I'm like reading, it's exactly more like this where I can sit there to think about what I'm saying. And oh, well, actually, it's more like a conversation because you're always just talking to different versions of yourself. You know what I mean? And you're constantly a different version of yourself, whether this is how I am, this is angry activated Angie, this is sad Angie, this is Angie who hasn't eaten enough, this is whatever. And if you can start to be like, because all of those in the past would just be, this is Angie without alcohol, Angie without alcohol, Angie without alcohol. I'm like, well, actually, and all of those problems were fixed by alcohol until you realize, okay, last time I was like this, I had a Kit Kat bar and I felt better, you know? And so suddenly you have options now, as opposed to just one thing that you're, oh, well, guess you want that thing and it's never going to get subsided.
Yeah. The reason why I ask is because like I do write, it's kind of like journaling, but I'm just dumping thoughts on paper because like I used to have like really bad sleep problems and my mind would just go 100 miles an hour. And unless I vomit my thoughts on paper, or even like I used to actually have like an old camera and just like talk in front of the camera. I had like,
that's awesome.
150. I had 150 journal entries and I put it online too. It's private now, but it's on YouTube because I was testing YouTube, but like, it's like, I think it was 2 or 3 days, about 2 to 3 times a day of like 20 minutes. The lowest was about 5 minutes. Shortest was 5 minutes, about 20 or 30 minutes. I'm just like dumping thoughts on camera, on paper, because my mind would not stop. In that kind of helped. That's why I ask about it.
So what does that do for you? Like when you, are you problem solving? Are you just, does it feel like a deposit or do you feel like you're answering questions or what does that dump feel like for you?
It's all over the place. It'll go from one thought to another. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's like cyclical. I got this from Tim Ferriss. It's like just dump everything on paper. Got to a point where like, this isn't fast enough. That kind of like what you're talking about. That's why I resorted to the camera. So I use that camera. So that's why I ask about it.
Exactly. And that's really what it is whatever is a convenient outlet for you. If you are comfortable with video editing, awesome. I think that was one of the first ways of journaling was because I couldn't do pen to paper. And so I would just film myself to say anything, even if it was just like a moment of it. I was like, I'm just going to capture what I'm thinking right now. And that just helped to do it. Nobody ever has to see them. They just have to get it out of my system, exactly like you said, because it would just help me stop ruminating about them. And that's all tracked too of same thing. I remember when I was young telling my parents like, I have 11 thoughts going in my brain right now. And one of them's always a song or something like that. So I've never had quiet brain, which is something I strive for. So when you're saying like, Oh yeah, I go to bed, I'm like, that's me every night. Like I'm constantly just yap, 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 yap. But that's where I have some tricks for that too, of like how to calm your thing, because I constantly have to.
Please share.
It takes me so long to sleep. There's weird little tricks as far as the rumination, because there's 1 and 2 of, I find myself, if I'm looking downward, I'm going to be in that ruminating past. I'm almost always in the past if I'm in the lower hemisphere of my sight. But if when I find myself unable to, I'm still thinking about this thing. If you look in the upper hemisphere, and that's when I start integrating eye movements too, of eye movements specifically upwards, because that's why you want to look up to the sky and why you want to do these things, because exactly like I said, that posture, anything downward kind of reacts your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system, really makes a lot in your brain chemistry. Because an example that I like is if a zebra gets chased by a lion, and then the lion finally stops chasing the zebra is able to shake it off and start drinking from the stream. He's not going to be like, there's a lion out there. I know there's a lion. I live somewhere that there's lions, and I have to constantly be afraid that there are lions. When they shake it off like that, animals do this thing called pandiculation, which is when they like stretch or bow, and you see them doing like that. They're not really stretching, they're pandiculating, which is sort of the way that animals can tell their muscles to like go back into the spot that they were supposed to be, because, again, there's a lion, I'm activated, and so they shake it off, and now their shoulders are not as activated as it was. And that absolutely affects your nervous system if you're constantly in this shame state, or if you're constantly in an aggressive state. Then everything around you is going to feel heavier and weigh shame on me, or everything's going to be a threat around me if I'm constantly looking for a threat, or if I'm constantly concerned about feeling shamed. It's just this, your body is telling you a lot of things, and that's why it does help of like, yeah, if you are feeling sad, like get up, get blood through your body, and take on a more confident posture. Just because fake a smile, it changes your body chemistry, and there's really something to it, and faking it till you make it will get you so far too.
We might spend a lot of time here. Common myths for sobriety.
I don't know. It's kind of a weird subject, because it's probably not all myths. I think that everything works as long as you do it with intent and curiosity. There's a lot of like stigma behind AA being super Christian, and that was something I was going to put on too, as far as like the woo-woo stuff of it. Of there's something to it, right? Because that's like saying like, well, I don't really like all the woo-woo of going to surgery. Like they're like really into it, and they've all these beeping machines, and you're like, but if they didn't go to school and have all that woo-woo, I wouldn't want them working on me. Same thing of, I went to a sound bath, and when we did the sound bath, I'd like to meet you. What are you doing? And one lady's like, I'm here because I had like a knee surgery a while ago, and I just don't feel the same. This might be a little too intense for you if you need to leave. And I'm like, she's going to be okay. It's a singing bowl, and she had a knee surgery 3 months ago. She's not going to rupture or anything. But if that lady didn't believe in that so hard, she wouldn't have this. You know what I mean? And that's where I think too, with the Christianity and the AAs, a lot of people need that. A lot of people need religion, and I think it's awesome, and I love when people find that. But a lot of people are turned off by it. But I'm like, if you can just remember that that's just a part of it, in the same way that people find interest in going to get their tarot cards read or something like that, but they're not fully involved with whatever spiritual thing. It's just something that they're doing, and they're taking what resonates and what they want out of the tarot card reading. They're not changing religions for this. But that person needs to really believe all of those things in order to read the tarot cards, right? So I think that religion has a lot of really helpful things for people trying to find grace and love in their life. And it's the same way of, it's important, and you should allow it in the same way of like, if everybody wants to go do the incline, but you tell everybody that it sucks and it's terrible, and there's false summits, and you're never going to really reach the top of it, nobody's going to ever try. But if you're like, yeah, some people do the incline, and some people do it every single day, you don't have to do it every single day. But if it wasn't, it wouldn't have the community behind it. And so it's just sort of taking that woo-woo of, thank you for making this great. I just want to take, that's always it, is take what resonates. If you don't like that specific flavor of that thing, don't take that part. And if it still works for you, then that works perfectly for you.
Yeah. Angie, where can we find you?
Anywhere. You can find me on Instagram as @Squeakachu, and that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you for coming, Angie.
Thank you.